Welcome everybody to our first APA workshop presented in collaboration with the Writing Center and the library. Today we are going to just talk a little bit about APA. Particularly, the first part of the session will focus on sort of some more general information that's useful for quoting no matter what style you're using. So, namely, introducing your sources and explaining why they're relevant, and how to determine whether a source is reputable and suitable for what you're doing. So that's going to be my portion of the program, and then we'll move to Bethany Miller from the library, who's going to talk about some more specifics when it comes to APA citation and identifying sources and looking in the databases. So I will start with my part here. So in my mind, if there's a top 5 list of things that I would love you to know in order to really be good at writing with sources, it is this little piece here is definitely in contention for number 1. The mechanics are extremely important, but getting there is also really important too. Introducing your quotes is a little tricky because it involves a lot of prep work. And that's something that we don't really think about. We find the source we want, we pick a quote out of it, we throw it in there, boom, this is what I'm saying, it illustrates it perfectly, but there's a lot more that you have to do in order to make that quote really work for what you're writing. So no matter what it is, the very first thing that you should do before you read something is find out all about who wrote it. And you don't have to spend like an hour, but a quick little Google search and just knowing who the person is, where they might be from, something about the piece, where it originally was published. And I'm going to talk all about a little bit more about that in a little bit, but a really interesting example. I was thinking about this last night, actually. I was sitting in the audience at Jesus Christ Superstar, and this is what popped in my head when the thing started. I thought, why didn't I research this more before I came here? I thought, I know who wrote it. I kind of know about it. But my brain was tumbling back through all the things I should have looked up. When was this first? When did this first get produced? Where was it first put on? What is the cultural significance? And so, training yourself to ask those questions about any piece of media that you consume, whether it's an article or a movie or a play, those are the questions that help you set up what you know about this thing that you are going to reference in something that you're writing. You're never going to be perfect at it. I've been doing this for a long time, and even though my brain is trained to ask those questions, I still didn't research it, but I'm going to. So when you do that, what you're doing is equipping yourself with some of the information that you need before you drop that quote into your essay. Every quote, virtually, I would say not every single quote, but pretty much, especially the first time that you quote something, in every essay you will ever write until the end of time, until you shuffle off this mortal coil, you need these things. You need to introduce that quote, you need to cite it, and then you need to explain why you used it. Now, in previous iterations of this presentation, I have turned on the track to the Vanilla Ice song and done a little bit of spoken word. I'll spare you that today. Maybe later, maybe another day. I still like the gift, though. All right, so before you do anything with a quote, it should have the following things. You have to have the names of the writers. In APA, this is going to be last names only, almost exclusively. Something about them that establishes why they're relevant. And you only have to do this the first time that they're mentioned, but what you're doing is taking a little snippet of what you found out when you did a little Google search of who these people are, or what this, what this journal is that you are getting this source from, or what this book is that you are, that you found. A little information about the book that establishes why you decided to use this quote is important. Here you're sort of setting up who they are and why they matter. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone? You're standing around in a circle and you're talking to your friend, this acquaintance, and they're just talking, and they're like, and then Sally, she had me take her to the impound lot because her car was there for the third time, but you've never met Sally and you don't know Sally, and you're like, oh wait, who? Wait, I'm sorry, oh yeah, Sally, we were friends in college, she was in my sorority. Now I know a little bit about Sally and how you know her. Same thing with your source. Before you go saying what this source said, I need to know, who are they? How'd you find out about them? What did they do? The name of the selection can be awfully helpful. This also helps you make sure that you know what it is that you're citing. Is this a book? Is it a chapter, an article, something else, a web page, a blog from a guy named Bob? You want to know what this thing is before you put a quote in. Also, the type of work that you're using is going to determine how it is going to appear on your references page at the end. And that's something that Bethany is going to address in more detail. Where and when was it published? This is extremely relevant. If you're writing a sociology paper and you're citing research from 1925, that doesn't mean that research doesn't have merit, but it bears mentioning that this happened a century ago. If it just came out in 2019 and it's the only study of its kind, that's something else that you want to keep an eye on or address, So, is it republished somewhere? This is probably less applicable for APA, but it still could happen. And also the where. Did this study take place in Belgium? Did it take place, in Japan? I mean, different cultural standards could apply. So that's something to know. And here we come to the quote. The quote that supports a point you're making, which you're going to integrate into your sentence and paragraph. We did a lot of things before we got to that quote. So setting up that quote takes a lot more than just picking it out of copying and paste it from your article and put it in your paper. And then, of course, you need your correct parenthetical citation, which is going to be the year of publication and, depending on how you mention them in the, introduction to this sentence, their last name or names. And an explanation of why you thought this was important. How does this research fit into your paper? Why was this particular quote the one that you're using to illustrate your point? So, as I just mentioned, the number of items that must be included or should be included or could be included way before you get to your actual quotation are many. This is the same list, just kind of a little smaller, but here are all of the little things that you can and should hit before that quote gets dropped. It's like a sandwich where all the meat is on top, and then your delicious little relish or whatever you would like to have in a sandwich. Perhaps you are having some, tomatoes and mozzarella. But anyway, then you need your parenthetical citation and an explanation of, why you felt it was important to include this quote. But the point is that it's not just the quote that you're focusing on, it's the context. So doing this ICE, introduction, citation, and explanation, it takes time and practice. The reason it's worth it to do it right is because this is part of your training to become a person who can do scholarly writing. When you leave here, you're not taking with you a little book filled with information that you're gonna look through. Oh, I remember. I know how to do APA. Let me just turn to page 16 of my college information that I learned here. No, what you're doing is you're building your muscles of, cognition and dedication, and learning how to, complete a task that you set your mind to doing. So that applies to both this, introduction and citation and explanation model, but it also applies to getting your citations correct in the reference section of your paper and in the parenthetical citation. That stuff matters because even though it might seem mundane and it might seem tedious, that is the convention that you're expected to adhere to. And when you're able to check that box, that is, one of those skills that you're adding to your toolbox. I figured out how to do this. I know where to go to do it, and I'm going to make sure it's right. Hello. All right, so from one acronym to the other, is my source reputable and suitable for the assignment I'm completing? Well, if you do some of that work, that context work, you're going to find this stuff out. But another acronym for you, and we use acronyms because they work, right, is CRAP. Oh, crap. So we've got ICE and CRAP. And the CRAP test is something that I knew about a long time ago, forgot about, and Bethany reminded me of it. And the Bass Library actually has a whole little web page dedicated to it. So I wanted to go over there and show you where it is. So here at the library homepage, if you click this big purple button, and this is a very useful button, the CRAP test is right here under how to evaluate your sources. And that stands for currency, so that's the when it was published. And like I said, if it was published a long time ago, that doesn't mean that it's not of value. It just means that that needs to be acknowledged and taken into consideration. Is it relevant, and why? Are these people rock stars in the criminology discipline? Or, is it a graduate student writing a dissertation? Knowing a little bit about who is writing the thing is going to help you determine whether it's relevant, or to what extent it's relevant within the constraints of the assignment that you're completing. Authority kind of goes hand in hand with that, particularly if you're using a news source. Think about your news sources and where they fall on the spectrum of politicization. There is an excellent chart, the media bias chart, that kind of shows you in a big spread out way where all the news sources fall, to the right, to the left. Are they considered, unbiased and fair reporting, or not so much? That chart is really useful. So think about, are you getting your, is the information from a news organization that is considered to be fair and unbiased by the majority of people, I guess. Accuracy, reliability, truthfulness, and correctness. Once again, it all comes down to what is the source of the thing that you're pulling this from. Is it peer reviewed? Is it moderated by, a network of experts in the field? Or is it self-published and just out there? Is it a government publication? To what extent is that, depending on, what you're doing, to what extent is that unbiased? And then, of course, the purpose. So I just wanted to talk through these really quickly and show you that they are here. And I kind of also just wanted to get us into the library pages, because there are so many good resources in here that we just, might overlook them. And so being in here and clicking around and exploring is really the only way that you'll familiarize yourself with the sources that are available to us. So that's what I have to say about, introducing your sources and providing appropriate context. And don't forget the ICE and the CRAP acronyms. And I'm going to turn it over to Bethany.
Okay, so welcome. My name is Bethany Miller. I'm a reference librarian here at LCCC. What I want to try to get through in this class, well, the first thing I wanted the students to do was to open up a web page, to open up Chrome and go to the library website. So it's the college URL, lorainccc.edu/library. That's one way to get to the library. And what I want to try to get through in the next little while is to talk about the whys, the whats, and the wheres of APA citations. And I want to use the library APA LibGuide to find examples of APA citations and to double check APA citations created in a library database. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and minimize my Word document. So I'm at the library website. First, I want to address the why, which was probably talked about in the last half of the presentation. But my brief explanation of why we cite is to give credit where credit is due. Somebody did the work. They need to get credit for having done the work. Another reason we cite is to add to the scholarly conversation. So somebody writes an article. They got some of their information from somebody else. You use their information to write an article. It gets published. Somebody else is going to use your information to do their research. So we're kind of building a scholarly web, maybe, of where information is coming from and how we can continue with the scholarly conversation. The other why is why use citation styles. So my example here is if I were to ask 10 of you to cite a book, I would get 10 different answers without giving you an example. You would include different pieces of information. You would include them in different order. So organizations like APA, the American Psychological Association, have attempted to kind of set a standard, set a template for how we cite information so it all looks the same. Okay. So what I want the students to do is to, from the library website, scroll down a bit. And instead of going to the research project, which is one place we just went to from the library website, I want you to scroll down under helpful links. And the fourth helpful link says LibGuides, and we're going to be working from a LibGuide or a library guide, kind of just what it sounds like. So go ahead and click on LibGuides. I need to click more carefully. Okay, so what the library has done is divided our LibGuides into 4 groups. And in our mind, APA is part of doing research. So the group that I would expand is how to do research or how to research. And alphabetically, APA is first. So that's one way to get to the APA LibGuides. You could just click right here on APA Style Guide. If you're not a menu person, if you're more of a search box person, there is a search box here in the LiveGuide section, so you could just put in APA. And the first one is fine. It's kind of that bold APA style guide, 7th edition. You could click on that. So 2 ways to get to the same place. Okay, so here we are in the APA LiveGuide. And there's a few sections I kind of want to highlight. At the top, kind of under that first long blue bar, if you hover over the blue words, you'll get tabs. And I'd like you guys to click on the tab that says Formatting Rules. So this is just kind of in text, in writing, details on what an APA paper should look like. Things like, what are the margins? 1 inch, that's usually a default anyway. What is the spacing? APA papers are double-spaced. What font should I use? There are a choice of fonts, but the safe one is Times New Roman 12 point. So kind of those kind of details of what the paper should look like. But if you're like me, I don't like reading all this text. You'd think I would. I'm a librarian, but I want to kind of just see a picture for a quick idea of what it should actually look like. So right next to where it says Formatting Rules, there is a tab that says Sample Papers. So go ahead and click on that. And we get a choice kind of right under, there's a box right under where it says Sample Papers. We get a choice of what kind of sample paper we want to look at. Either a sample student paper or a sample professional paper. And this is new to APA. It's kind of divided who you are as to what kind of APA paper you should write. And there are some differences, not a lot, but there are some differences. I think for your purposes, that unless your teacher tells you otherwise, you would follow the sample student paper. So go ahead and click on that. And I like this because it shows me, without me having to read all that text, what the paper should look like. And it's a little hard to see up here, but I can see, just quickly what the title page should look like, the first page. Things are centered, things are bolded. There's double space between most things, but more space between the title and the rest of the information. So it just shows me what it should look like. If I go to the second page, I get a brief idea of what the first page should look like. The title is centered, it's bolded, and the whole thing's double spaced. But this class is about citations, so I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. Okay, there we go. So kind of the last 3 pages are what the reference page should look like, or the references page. So just briefly, I can look at it and I can see things like the word references is centered, bolded at the top of the page. I can see things like it's double-spaced. I can see things like there are hanging indents. So for each individual citation, the first line is all the way to the left, but subsequent lines are indented. And if I look a little more closely, I can see that it's alphabetized. So without even doing a whole lot of reading, I know what it should look like, and I like that. So the LiveGuide can take you here. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Okay. Another feature of the LiveGuide that I wanted to point out is over on the left, if you would click where it says Citation Elements, so there's a blue button that says Citation Elements. And this section of the LiveGuide kind of gives you more specific details on the 4 main parts of an APA citation, those being the author, the date, the title, and the source. And the source is kind of who put the information out there. If it were a book, it would be the publisher. If it were a journal article, it would be the journal itself. So those are the 4 main parts. This could be useful. Let's say you have 3 authors instead of 1 author. There's a tab in the author section that says, oh, okay, 3 to 20 authors. This is how you handle them. Scroll down a little more, the dates. Dates, how much information of the date you put in kind of depends on what it is. For journal articles, it's generally just the year. For newspaper articles, you're going to write the whole date, the year, the month, and the day. The reason being they're published every day. So that kind of more detailed information would help me find that newspaper article. The title, there's some nuance, there's some variation in the title. Is it the whole work? Is it the whole book? Or is it part of the work? Is it a chapter in the book? What's italicized? What's capitalized? Those kind of questions can be answered here for the title. And then finally, the source, kind of who put the information out there. Different kinds of sources, journals, books. Government agencies, they get a little bit of special attention. A lot of times there's more than one government agency involved in putting the information out there because the government is very hierarchical. So this could tell you, give you some more information of how to write a government agency as your source. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the top. And let's see. Something else I want to point out. So I'm going to go back kind of to the home page, that first tab or blue tab over on the left. And I'm going to suggest 4 places to either figure out what your citation is, and or write the citation from scratch, and or double check the citation if it was generated by a machine, by a website like CiteFast, for example, or even by the library databases. It's always good to double check what was created by the machine against one of these sources. So there's the LibGuide itself, where we are. I also linked, when I kind of put this LibGuide together, at the top, kind of next to the picture of the book, there's a tab that says really good websites. And I linked to what I thought was some really good websites to help you write your citations. Kind of the Excelsior Online Writing Lab is, in my opinion, the new kid on the block that librarians like this website to help write citations. Kind of the one that a lot of people know is the OWL at Purdue. I've linked that here in the LibGuide. And the one I'm going to use as an example today is the second one, the APA Style and Grammar Guidelines, and specifically the reference examples, so kind of part of that bigger APA Style website. So what I want to do is this. If you scroll down a little bit, there's assignment 1. And the assignment is this. So follow this link and decide what is it. Use the APA Style Manual reference examples, which I just talked about, page to help you decide. Be able to say which citation example you chose. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and click where it says citation 1. So I've brought up a web presence. I'm going to leave that there a minute. And I'm going to ask you to go back to the APA LibGuide, so that tab. For me, it's just to the left. And I'm going to ask you to open up another web page. So open up the APA Style, Grammar, and Guidelines reference examples. So right here is where I want you to go. OK, so APA has divided their reference examples into 4 groups. Textual works, data sets, audiovisual material, and online media. And it tells you, kind of in the writing right underneath, that there are over 100 citations, kind of specific, different things you might cite in the APA manual. In fact, there are 114. And that's Chapter 10. Chapter 11 goes further with more examples citing legal documents, things like Supreme Court documents, those kind of resources. So there are over 100 citation examples in here. And at this point, I would add that in my mind, this is the ultimate resource. This is the last word in APA citations. So if you had questions that weren't answered by websites, I would say either buy the APA manual if you think you're going to use it a lot in your future classes, or come into the library. There are about 7 copies you can check out. Okay? So APA has divided the types of citations in these ways. So textual works is where you're going to, I think, use a lot of the examples. Textual works being things that are written, so writing. And the first box is really probably the most common. Periodicals are things that are published periodically, so things like journals, journal articles, newspaper articles, magazine articles. Okay, so those might be sources you're using, definitely journal articles, in doing college-level research. Some of the other divisions, books and reference works. So we know what a book is. This would be a place to look for how to cite a book. Chapters, edited chapters, so chapters in a book, not the whole book. Reports and gray literature. So gray literature is what the word APA uses to describe, to say, well, I don't know what else it is, so it's gray literature. And reports. Probably the one that might come up for you here is a report by a government agency. A lot of times if you're out there on the internet, the government puts out a ton of information. And as I mentioned earlier, some of their citation rules are a little different than other sources, so a report by a government agency might be a citation you'd need to use. If we scroll down a bit, there's some more boxes for that textual type of works. The only one I really want to highlight here is if you're an education student, you might be using the ERIC database, and there is kind of a specific example for how to cite ERIC documents. I'm going to scroll down a little more. Data sets. I don't think I've ever used these, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through these because I'm not 100% sure what they are, and I'm thinking that maybe at this level of research you're not going to be using a data set. So I'm going to skip this one. I'm going to scroll down to audiovisual materials. You might use some of these. They've pulled out TED Talks, for example, specifically because that's a site that a lot of students might use. They've pulled out YouTube videos, specifically how to cite a YouTube video. So this might be a section you use for audio and visual type of resources. Scroll down a little more. The last section is online media. Kind of the left box is social media sites like Facebook or Twitter. How do you cite a Facebook post? How do you cite a tweet? And then finally, web pages and websites. And the rule of thumb is that if you don't know what else it is, if there's no other category you can put it into and it's on the web, then maybe it's a web page. Maybe that's what you're citing, just a web page. You're probably not going to cite a whole website. You're going to cite a piece of the website, so a web page. I mean, it's kind of, I don't know what else to do with it. It's on the web. I think it's a web page. Okay? So what I want to kind of walk through with the students is looking at advertising, looking at this web presence that I brought up for citation 1. Let's look at some of the information we have and maybe take a guess as to what we think it is. Okay, what am I citing? What is it? So if I look kind of quickly, I see there's a title, and I see there's a date. Okay, so that's good information. But right here, I don't see an author. I don't see a person's name. So I'm going to scroll down, kind of look quickly, looking for a name, looking for other information that might be used in a citation. I get all the way to the bottom, and I still don't see a person's name. So in terms of kind of who put this out here, I know it's the Cleveland Clinic because the web presence is branded by the Cleveland Clinic. So I have some information, but I might not have it all. So what I want you guys to decide is to go back, kind of toggle between these two if you want to. Go back to the APA page, the page on reference examples, and kind of tell me what you think you're citing. What is this?
A web page on a website with an organizational group author.
Woohoo! A web page on a website with an organizational group author. So kind of, going through the examples, it really wasn't any of these in the top. And maybe just quickly I should mention here, in my mind, or I think in APA's mind, kind of online newspapers or online magazines are often tied to a print. There's also a print version of it. Okay, so think of those periodicals kind of in the first boxes. There's also a print version of it. I'm reading a New York Times article on a computer, but it's got a print version, so it would be an online newspaper. Okay? But we're going to scroll down. Because I didn't really fall into any of these other categories, I agree it would be a web page on a website. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. Then I am faced with some other choices. The first one being a web page on a news website. I kind of want to differentiate that. If it's tied to a print newspaper like the New York Times, I would choose an online newspaper. If it's a news site that doesn't have a print equivalent, let's say like Yahoo Sports, then I would say it's more of a web page on a website. So a decision has to be made. What is it? Looking at our choices, the fourth one is a web page on a website with an organizational group author. We didn't have a person's individual name, but we know the Cleveland Clinic, it's part of their website. So that's what I would choose. So if we click on number 4, we're taken to an example of what the citation should look like, what the reference should look like. We notice things like, so there's no person's name. So instead of the World Health Organization, I would put in the Cleveland Clinic. We notice that there's only a year there. No, there isn't. There's a whole date. And we had a whole date on the Cleveland Clinic website, web page. So I could use the whole date. There's a title. We had a title, so we could fill that in. Notice the title is sentence case. So it is, the first letter of the first word is capitalized, just like a sentence, but the other words are not capitalized. Something to keep in mind or to recognize when you're looking at the example. Also, it's italicized. So it gives me a picture of what it should look like. That helps me. It gives me a picture of what the in-text citations should look like. So we talked about those earlier. And a lot of these, I think maybe most of them, under the examples are some bullet points of things to keep in mind. So I would read the bullet points to make sure I'm doing the best citation I can do. Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave this space. I'm going to close this tab. And I'm going to go back to the live guide. So now I'm back in the live guide. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the databases. Okay, I'm going to go for it here. All right, so assignment 2 says use the databases. Instead of Googling it, a good idea is to use the databases. Why do I say that? Well, because I'm a librarian. Because the databases have already vetted information for you. It's not the wild, wild west out there of information. It's information that has been approved by, let's say, librarians, publishers, researchers. So it's a place to go to know that the information will be reliable. Also, it's free. Sometimes, if you're out there on the internet, even if you're at Google Scholar, you might get to a journal article and you go to read it, and there's a message that says you can read this, but you have to pay $45 to read it. In the databases, that same information is going to be free. So I'm recommending using databases to find information for your research. Let's see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the assignment. I'm going to do a really quick search. So I'm asking students to, using the LCCC Live Guide, find the appropriate reference example, what is it, for the below reference, which was generated by the LCCC databases. Double check in the citation and decide if it's correct, and be prepared to say how it needs editing or if it doesn't need editing. So I have a reference here in the Live Guide. It's kind of small, but here it is. And since I have a little bit of time, I'm going to run this search. I'm going to go back to the home page, and you can follow if you want or not. So this is really research, not citations, but I'm going to run a quick search. Let's say I want to know if the COVID-19 pandemic affected college students' academic achievement. That's my research question. So I'm going to pick keywords out of that longer question, and I'm going to put them in a search box. So I'm going to put in COVID-19. Oops. And, because I want to glue them together with and. I want everything in there, so I'm going to and them together. College. And achievement. Those are going to be my keywords. Okay? And I'm going to run the search. Okay, so now I've run a search in the databases. I get 1,300 results. But I'm just going to go ahead and say I like the first one. It kind of seems to be on target. The effective online lecture on college students' learning achievement during the COVID-19 pandemic. Seems to be pretty much something that's going to support my research question or thesis statement. So what I want to do is go into the record of the article by clicking on the title. And I still don't have the full text. In order to read the full text, I would have to go over here and view the record in DOAJ for this particular one. There's different full text choices for different articles. This one would take me down this DOAJ path. But what we're here for is citation. So in the databases, to the right of an article that you think you might want, there are tools. And I want you guys to click on the Cite tool. And what it does is it brings up a box that gives different citation formats, alphabetically arranged. So we're APA. So if I just scroll down a little on the right of this box that popped up, I see APA, 7th edition. And I think at this point, what I would do is copy and paste it into a Word document. So I'm going to highlight it and copy and paste it into a Word document. Maybe I'm going to paste it at the end of my research paper. Maybe I started the paper. The references are going to go at the end anyway, so I'm just going to throw it on there. You can always edit Word or Google Docs. And what it's going to look like in the live guide, not in a Word document, is here. So this is what I copied and pasted from the database. So my question is, in my assignment, double check the citation to decide if it's correct. Be prepared to tell me how it needs editing, if it needs editing. So this time we're going to use the live guide. We're not going to go out to APA. We're not going to go out to OWL at Purdue. We're going to just use the live guide here at our school. If I'm looking to double check a citation that was created in a database for an article, what tab do you think I would use on the left? Where would you go first? Over here. A database, an article from a database. Articles. I would go to articles first. That's what I'm trying to cite. So I'm going to choose articles. And then I'm given some choices. Is it an article from a database? Is it online, meaning it's out there on the internet? Or is it in print? Well, I've kind of said a few times now it's in a database, so we're in the right place. And the other kind of sub-question you have to decide is, does it have a DOI number or not? So I'm going to go back to it. I'm going to show you it a little bigger. A DOI number is a digital object identifier number. It's kind of like a driver's license number for an article. It's unique to that article. It's a convention that publishers want to be used to identify articles. So some articles have DOI numbers, some don't. It's growing in that they're being applied, they're being included, but not every article is going to have a DOI number. So my question is, does my article, which this is the same reference, I just made it bigger, does it have a DOI?
Yes.
It does. Okay, good. So at the end, you see the DOI number. So if I go back to the live guide, It's a journal article in a database with a DOI, so I'm actually in the right place. This is the right example. So I'm going to scroll down a little, ask you guys to scroll down a little. And what I've done is kind of, again, copied and pasted that reference from the database just below what the reference should look like. And my question to you is, what I copy and pasted, is it right? And if it isn't right, what changes need to be made?
Hanging indent?
Excellent. So there should be a hanging indent here. Now here's the thing. I can't change it in the live guide here and now. So yes, it should be a hanging indent. The first line should be all the way to the left. The second line should be indented 5 spaces. Okay, great. Any other differences?
Double space?
Double space. Excellent. When you cut and paste from the databases, you got to remember to double space it. Good. Anything else?
The title should be in sentence space rather than
Which title?
the title of the article.
Excellent. So the title of the article, notice that all, let's look at the bigger version. The article title, so starting with the effects of, all the first letters of the first words are capitalized. That is incorrect in APA style for the article title. It should be sentence case. So only the first letter of the first word, the. If there were a subtitle, so colon subtitle, the first letter of the first word of the subtitle. Acronyms would be capitalized. That's kind of normal. Proper nouns would be capitalized. That's normal. So great. Often, not always. Sometimes we cut and paste from the databases, and they do get the article title right. Sometimes they don't. So that's a double check. Anything else that looks incorrect about this citation? Kind of looking back at the example.
There should just be an initial for the author's first name.
Excellent. APA style only uses initials for authors' first names, first and or middle names. MLA is different. APA uses only initials. So, and I think furthermore, but I'm not 100% sure, I think this name is first name, the cut and paste was first name, last name, but APA is last name, comma, first initials. So it would really be Ramadhani, comma, K, period, and then the date. Okay, so even they got the order wrong. I show this to you, and I will say I had to search a little bit to find an incorrect citation. So the citations from the databases aren't always incorrect, but they might be. So I'm highly encouraging you to double check them using either the APA Live Guide or one of the other sites of your choice, OWL at Purdue, Excelsior, or APA's style guide. A couple other things. From the Live Guide, you might want to use citation generators. If you have something you got from the web, so it's not in a database, maybe you want to at least have a tool to help you start the citation, but always double check it. Kind of at the bottom of the Live Guide, there's a link to some suggested citation generators out there on the web. I kind of like either CiteFast or this Noodle Tools Express. Those were my two choices. So kind of just wanted to point that out. So my parting advice, my last words are use the APA Live Guide to help you either figure out what you're citing, create the citation from scratch, or double check the citation if it's been created from the databases or one of these citation generating websites. And well, that's just it. Always double check. That's my last piece of advice. Always double check. And that is all.